Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name's Tim. Today we got we're gonna do some front brakes on this is the 2002 F150. This one is gonna be the older style that has the tapered wheel bearings in the rotors. As you can see here, as this cap here indicates that there's bearings in there. The back brakes are disc brakes, pretty simple to do, just nuts and bolts. This is a little bit more complicated because it does have those bearings in there. So I wanted to go over a quick video over that since it was time to do some brakes again. One thing I want to note is getting these caps off. First thing you want to do is put your vehicle on a jack. I got it in the center here. Definitely want to use some jack stands, which I don't have right now. I do have them, just don't have them in place. Definitely want to do that for safety reasons. I got the tire on the other side, so should use the jack stands regardless, but it's only gonna drop on this side if it does drop. So yeah, I'm gonna do this side, I'm gonna do the other side. I got the wheel off, as you can see. Next thing you want to do is take this cap off. You can use a couple different ways. If you use like a screwdriver, it's most likely going to mess up the cap, and if you damage this cap, you might have trouble getting it back in. Plus you want it to seal and keep dirt and water and everything out. So I don't recommend using pliers. They do make pliers for these, however I don't have a pair. I'm going to use my little snap-on here. It's got a little right angle on it. Let me get the whole thing in the picture here. It's a little pry bar. It's got a beveled edge. See if I can zoom in on this here. Got a nice beveled edge and at 90 degree. So I'm just gonna, I already got it separated, as you can see. Just go around tapping it with a hammer. Work my way around 360. Just keep working it to where I can get it, to where I can wiggle it off by hand. So if you don't have one of those, you can use like a punch, or not a punch, but like a chisel, something with like a sharp beveled edge. Like I said, a screwdriver would work, but probably use that as a last resort besides the pliers or channel locks. So yeah, we got to get that off, and then you don't have to. I guess you can take the brake caliper off first, but that's, I'm gonna go ahead and get this cap off and get it out of the way. But go ahead and finish doing that. I am going to pull the brake caliper bolts. You got two, one up top here, one down the bottom. Can't remember. I think these are 13 millimeter. So yeah, I'm gonna pull those off and then set that aside. Actually got a hanger for that. Then we're going to come back here. Alright, so I did go ahead and take this caliper off. I wanted to show you what that looks like here. It was two 13 millimeter bolts, one there, one up top. So I wanted to show you, this is where you want to go ahead and press your caliper pistons back in. This is dual piston. So I'll show you how I got it set up here. I got the old brake pad in here. Now this tool is made for single calipers, so I had to work it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So I got them both down, bottomed out. There are a couple other methods you can use to make a tool like this, where you can crank it by hand. This one's just quicker. They do have the one like this that's for a dual caliper. I don't own that one, but that would be nice. That'd be the quickest and best option. Then you can always resort to the channel locks, but you probably want to use like a 16-inch or greater in size of pressing it in. Just don't use the new brake pads. You don't want to damage the new brake pad. Make sure you got your old brake pad in there when you're pushing against it. So a couple things I did forget to mention is you want to get some grease, because I'm replacing these rotors. I'm not resurfacing them. I'm not a big fan of resurfacing rotors on F150s. They tend to warp, and when you resurface them, they just warp faster. So I don't want to do it again until it's time for brake pads again. So I'm just going to go ahead and replace them. You want to get some grease, because the new ones aren't going to have any grease. when you transfer your bearings over. You want to get a grease packer to be able to pack the bearings. Now I'm going to use this one. It's a bearing packer like this where you put a grease gun on the end of it. I've never used this style before, so I just want to kind of really just wanted to try it out and see how it goes. I normally use a bearing packer. It's like the Lyle version. It's in a plastic, like container. You put the bearings in there, and you got the white plastic top that you press down and force the grease between them. That's been my preferred method anyways. I actually don't know where that tool is currently either, so we'll try that way. The last resort is you can use your hands. You can put a bunch of grease in the palm of your hand. I recommend wearing gloves, but make sure you get grease that's approved for disc wheel bearings on vehicles for highway use as well. A lot of different greases out there. Some are for marine and farm use. Make sure you're getting something that's approved for disc wheel bearings on the highway. But yeah, you can put some in your hand, take the bearing with your other hand, and just roll it and beat it at the same time. Pack it in that way. It's another option. You do want to get new grease seals for the back of these rotors. They don't come with it. We'll show you that later. And that's about it now. Right now I just need to pull off this bracket here. I think they're going to be 18 millimeters if I'm not mistaken. Probably going to use my impact gun on that because they're going to be pretty tight. But yeah, I just wanted to show you, how to get that caliper back in. And if it's not going in, you could have a piston that's sticking, and then you'll have to replace the caliper. And you just want to make sure too on these rubber boots around the caliper, the piston, that it's still in place and sealed, not rolled over or pinched or anything. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get that bracket off, and then probably get to pulling this cap off, and we'll be back. All right, so I did want to show you this hook here, getting hooked up in here in the control arm hole. Got that hooked around inside the caliper. That's nice to hang them. You don't want to put any stress on this brake line. You want it to be in its natural state. You don't want to kink it or put any undue stress on it because it'll damage it. Just wanted to note that you can use coat hangers, or you don't have to use these fancy hooks, but they're pretty cheap on like Amazon. Just want to note that before we keep going. Alright guys, so I got the brake caliper off here. What I did was I turned this wheel to the left, the steering wheel to the left, and gave me more access back here to get an impact in there. So I used the M12 stubby with a swivel 18 millimeter impact socket. Pulled them right out. Probably should put a little bit of blue thread locker on those before you put them back in. But that's the bracket here. This is where you want to go ahead and lube this up. Your caliper slide pins, you get the one here, one up there. Take your brake grease, make sure they're go in and out smoothly. These are still pretty good. Next, the only thing holding this brake rotor on is your nut right here, which has a cotter pin. So you want to take that cotter pin out, and then this little metal cap here that goes over the nut itself. Then you can put a socket on the nut, and it should come off by hand, or with a, shouldn't be that tight. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, I don't have the new cotter pin. It's a good idea to put new cotter pins in there. These are pretty heavy duty. I'm gonna try my best with some needle nose and some side cutters. Try not to damage it. Just bend it enough to get it out so I can reuse it. It's not the best ideal. Ideally, you want to replace it, and you should replace it. But I may end up reusing this one. Let's see. So yeah, that's it for now. I'm gonna go ahead and pull this nut off. Once you pull this nut off, just you'll I'll come back as soon as I get it off so I can show you. Alright, so I got it all cleaned up here, got the cotter pin out, cleaned it up. I don't like dealing with dirty wheel bearing grease. It's one of the things I hate messing with. I got a 1 1/16 impact socket here, fits on there real snug. Doesn't have to be an impact socket, it's not tight. It's just gonna be, you know, hand snug. I think you can use a 27mm as well. You can use chrome socket, it don't matter. All you need is a ratchet to hand ratchet. Break it loose. I've already broke it loose and spin it by hand now. It was barely tight at all. That's how it should be. You don't want to bear that down because you burn your wheel bearings up. So yeah, we'll go over that later on how to get that tight and snug to the right amount once we get it going back on. But now I just want to pull it off. There's a washer behind that nut. Make sure you keep that. Make sure you remember what order it goes in. But yeah, we're going to do that. There's going to be some bearings in there. You're going to make sure once you slide this off that you remember the orientation where those bearings go. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and do that and then we'll be back. Alright, sorry it got dark on me here. I always do things late in the evening. So this is that washer. I already removed the nut there. I've actually took the bearing, the little small bearing out already. This is that washer. You'll see that it's keyed. It only goes on there one way. What I like to do here, once I get the nut on this side, or not the nut, but the nut, but the bearing as well. Once I get that bearing out, I like to go ahead and put the washer and the nut back on. And then what I'll do is I'll grab that rotor and pull it at an angle so it this catches that bearing on the back, because there's a seal on the back. That way it rips the seal out with the bearing. Takes some practice. Just, if you pull it straight, it's not gonna come right off. You just got to catch that bearing on the inside to kind of like rip it out as it comes. Doesn't take a whole lot of force. Just want to show you the bearing here. This is the little bearing. Already got it cleaned up. You want to go ahead and clean it up so you can pack it with new grease. Check your rollers, make sure they're smooth. Don't have any Mars or anything. Everything's good on that one. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and put that on. Since I can't do it on camera, because I need both hands to do it, I'll just have to pause it and come back once we get there. But if you're not comfortable doing that, you can always knock the seal out from the inside as well. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and do that. Alright, so I did want to show you a little bit what I'm talking about here. So you actually can't leave the washer on because it won't fit the bearing race. You just leave the nut on. I had the nut in there. I pulled it down. It's sitting on here. You can pull it down to where you can feel it catch. You can catch that bearing, and then what you want to do is catch that bearing and grab it firmly with both hands, top and bottom, or 3 o'clock. And but yeah, you just want to catch it and rip it out. All right, so I got it ripped out here. And what you'll see here is you'll see that bearing with some dirty grease on it there. And then you'll see on the back here is that seal, the wheel seal that holds that grease in. That's what I was talking about, getting that seal out. So now, I got one less step of removing that seal. I just put the new seal in, the new rotor, and good to go after I get all this cleaned up and re-greased. But that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna get this all cleaned up really well. Then we're gonna grease the bearings and put the grease on the new shaft there and inside the wheel bearing, and then we'll come back. Alright guys, welcome back. I decided to hold off on filming until I had some daylight so I can see what's going on here. One thing I did want to mention is make sure you clean your spindle off here really well. You want to clean off where the lip here where the seal rides on the, and you want to go ahead and clean off your ABS sensor right here. Go ahead and clean off. It ain't got to be perfect, but usually it's got a build up of metal on there, because that never gets cleaned off until till you get in here, so you want to take care of that while you got access to it. The pushing the brake piston calipers in, you want to make sure that your brake fluid reservoir, sometimes it will overflow if you push them in. If it's ideally, you're not supposed to top the brake fluid off, and once it wears down, you know, it's just the same level, it just pushes it back up to where it needs to be. But if it's been topped off in between, it will overflow. Just be mindful of that. But yeah, we're gonna go over, show you the new rotor. Since we're replacing the rotors, they come with new bearing races, so we don't have to worry about those on the old rotor, inspecting those or anything. They do come dry, so we'll go over and show you real quick. Alright, so they do come dry. Like I said, you want to clean this off with some brake clean. These surfaces on the rotor on both sides, front and back, this is the back side obviously, but on both sides will have a film or oil on it. You got to clean off with brake clean. I've already done that on this one. But the inside of your races here are going to be dry, no grease. I like to go ahead and put some grease in there. You don't want to overdo it. You don't want to pack it full or anything like that. Just put a light, you know, cover in there. So I'm gonna do that. Got the new seals. These are national seals here. Part number may vary based on application, but I've got the old bearing in here in my bearing packer. So this is kind of how you want to set it up. Threads through the bottom. Kind of want to layer to make sure you got the concave, you know, facing that direction. The instructions aren't the greatest on it, but put the bearing in there. You want the tapered end facing up, the narrow end on the bearing facing up, and then tighten this top plate down with this little knurled, like just gives you something there. It's actually made onto it. Gives you something to grip to tighten it down. It ain't got to be super tight, just hand tight is all you want it. And then you got the grease fitting on top. Just pump grease in there until that grease starts coming out the bottom of the bearing, and give it a pump or two more, and then you should be good. As far as putting these seals in, the first thing you want to do is put your bearing in there. Once you get your bearing greased up and got your grease in the race and get it in there, then you want to grab your seal, and it's going to sit in like this. You got the lip facing outwards. Just going to drop it in there. A couple ways you can do this. For one, you want, when you're after you get it in there and it's sitting in there flush, you want to put some grease around the lip. I like to grease the spindle as well. And I'm going to use, since I have them, the bearing and seal driver here. So it's kind of hard to hold this, do this with one hand. But basically it's going to go like this. Or I'm sorry, I got it backwards. It's going to go like this. This one, you know, it's basically the same exact size all the way around as that seal. It's going to sit it down in there, tap it in with a hammer. You can use a board like a 2x4 or something, go over top of it, get it started, and go around with a hammer and finish it around the edge, if you don't have one of those. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get the grease in there. Alright guys, so I've resulted back to my handy dandy Lyle bearing packer here. This is what it looks like here. I can give you the part number. The other method just wasn't working out too well, so I went ahead and got this one packed. You can see the grease is pushed out through the top of it now when you push down on the plunger. This piece right here, put it down there and press down on it, and the grease. Just make sure you work it, you know, get all even on all the sides, work your way around, pushing at different angles in a 360 motion. So that's about it. I'm just going to pull that bearing out and pretty much just stick it in over here, and then put my seal in right behind it. I'm gonna use the clean bearing. This is the smaller one that goes on the other side, but I'm gonna put it in facing this way, the large end out. That's how it goes down in there. It's tapered. Just drop it in there. It's got plenty of grease on it. I'm not gonna wipe it off. I'm just gonna leave that grease on there and stick it in there. And then I'm gonna do that and put that seal in here, tap it in with my seal driver. Like I said, you can use a piece of wood, flat piece of wood, to get it started evenly, or finish it off with like a ball peen hammer or something, or a socket if you got a big enough socket. But I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then we'll be right back. Alright, so I got the bearing in there, got the seal in there, it's all nice and flush. Next, I like to put a little bit of grease on that seal. You don't want to put it on dry. On the the little lip right here, the rubber piece in the middle. I like to use a little paintbrush for this. Got a little grease on there. Just gonna work it in there, work it around. And then I'm actually gonna use this and dab a little bit of grease on the spindle as well. And then it'll be ready to go on once we get the other bearing greased up. Alright guys, so I got that bearing in there, got it lubed up, set it in there. It's probably going to push out trying to put it on, so we're just going to have to probably push it back in once we get it on there. Did want to show you on the spindle real quick. So right here, got this lubed up a little bit. Don't put a lot on there, just a thin layer. And then ready to slide it on and put our washer in, and then our nut and then the cage, and we'll show you what that looks like here in a minute. Alright, so we got that on there, got it slid on there. This rotor is rusted on a little bit. I'll probably clean that up a little bit. Got a little bit damp. But yeah, you put your washer on, you got your bearing in there. It's a little small bearing on the front. You put your washer on here. It's just keyed, so it only goes one way. Usually it'll be a groove worn into it to indicate which side goes where. Just push that in there, and then now you want to start your nut here. Let's see. Just want to get it hand tight for right now. Make sure you don't cross thread it. Basically, you just want to keep it from falling off. Right now, you just want to spin this rotor, work that grease and air out, or not work the grease out, but work it in rather. Let me see if I can do this. But yeah, you just want to give it some good spins. Should spin freely like that. So a couple of different procedures. Go forwards and go backwards. Just work it in real well. There's barely any play in it right now. It's almost where you really want it. But we got to seat these bearings. So forward, I think, says goes 12 foot-pounds. Turn it a couple times and then torque it to 30 foot-pounds as you're spinning it. So, and then you come off like a quarter or half a turn, and then you just hand tighten it. Usually with people that have done this many times like myself, I'll just snug it up real tight with a ratchet by hand tight, spin it around, and then I'll back it off a whole turn, and then I'll snug it up again and just get it by feel, just hand tight, grab the head of the ratchet and just barely snug it, and then I'll call it a day. Biggest thing is you don't want it too tight, but that's what's not going to be holding it anyways. That cotter pin's what's going to be holding that nut from coming loose. That's why you want to make sure you get a new one. Because once you bend it back and forth multiple times, steel, it gets weak and then it snaps. That's the only thing holding this on, so you definitely want to make sure you got a good one. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and do that procedure. I can't really do it on camera because I can't hold the phone and do it, but we're gonna go ahead and do that, and then we'll come right back. All right, so I went ahead and got it torqued. I went ahead and did the forward procedure, got it 12 foot-pounds, spun it, and then as I was spinning it, torqued it to 30 foot-pound with the torque wrench. So that's where it's at now. Now I'm just gonna do with the hand ratchet. You don't want to use a torque wrench to go in reverse. I think it's a 1/4 of a turn, so I'm just gonna get the ratchet. I'm just going to put it at 3 o'clock like this, and I'm just going to come up to 12 o'clock once I get the right direction here. I'm going to go back around. It's hard to do with one hand. Alright, so I'm going to come up. I'm going to set the camera down for a second. Alright, so I had to use both hands to get it up there. So just going to stop at 12 o'clock. Just going to kind of see where that's at by hand. Take my socket off and spin it a little bit. Looks like it's a little loose. Let's see where we are here. Yeah, so I can still snug it by hand, so that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna get it hand tight as I can get it by hand at this point, and then it should be good to go. And that's pretty much it. Once you get everything on there, you can, get your wheel tightened down. You can take the wheel top to bottom, jerk it back and forth, and see if it's got any play. Shouldn't have any play, but I think that's going to be good. Yeah, so next you want to put your caliper bracket on. I think the torque on those 18mm bolts is like 140. I'm just going to hit them, put a little bit of this blue medium thread locker on there. It's red because it's the gel, but it is medium strength blue. Using my little stubby, I'm just going to hammer down on it, ride with it. I'm not even going to probably go behind and torque it. And then got the pistons already pushed in, put the new brake pads on, and put the caliper on. And then just going to hand tight those bolts. They're probably like 30 foot-pounds, 30, 35, something like that. And then make sure you pump your brake when you're done. Definitely want to pump your brake before you try to drive off, or you won't have any brake pedal. If you ever done that before, then you know the feeling of your heart about to jump out of your chest because you think you lost brakes, and you probably never do that again. But yeah, definitely pump your brake pedal up before you back out or put it in reverse or drive. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get the bracket on there. You can clean it up really well. You can replace the hardware if you want. I tend to don't like aftermarket hardware kits, but they just don't do as well as the original in my opinion, but I'll replace them if they're real beat up. Let's see. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and do that. You definitely want to put some grease in your caliper slide pins, some silicone grease. You don't want to use the same type of bearing grease. You want something like silicone that's gonna not break down and take the heat and everything. That's what it's made for. So we'll take those pins out. I've already took them out and cleaned them off. I'm just going to put some new fresh grease on them, and then put them back in, and that'll be it. Go ahead and get this caliper bracket on here. So one thing I did want to mention is go ahead and put your cage on there to hold your cotter pin. On this one I had to take it off and move it around about 2 or 3 times to get it to line up. If it don't line up, then you want to either tighten the nut or loosen the nut, whichever the shortest distance is. Usually I prefer to tighten it rather than loosen it. But if you got it real tight, you can back it up a little bit, just a hair. If it's going to be more than just a hair, then go ahead and go to tighten it to the next slot. But I was able, like I said, just pulled it off, turned it, put it on, pulled it off, turned it, put it on, and then it lined right up. So got the cotter pin in there. Gonna go ahead and fold that over. But yeah, I'm gonna get off camera and do this so I can use both hands. But you want to do that, then put your cap on. But when you put your cap on, you want to hit it with a soft hammer, soft faced hammer, like a rubber mallet or something. You don't want to damage it. Just tap it on. Don't have to take a lot of force. Just make sure you start it evenly. Alright, so I went ahead and hit those caliper bolts, put a dab of thread locker on there, went ahead and hit them with the stubby. I actually went over them with a torque wrench because I was just curious, and at 140 they were pretty much right there after nailing them down with that stubby at full power. So I think one of them may have turned just a hair, but with that thread locker it wouldn't have mattered. Let's see. So yeah, now we're ready to go ahead and make sure your brackets are lubricated. Just want to separate the rubber boot here from the end and then slide it out. You don't want to pull that boot out with it. So still got some old grease in there. We're going to clean that off again. Then we'll put that dielectric silicone brake grease, actually forward brake grease, and then not gonna cake it on there. You don't want a lot, just to coat it up really well, and then put it back in there and make sure it free spins. Make sure it's sealed on this boot. Make sure the boot head is sealed around that lip, and it's also sealed on the bracket itself like it is now, right there. Make sure that boot is sealed in both places, and then you can go ahead and put your brake pads in, the new ones. Like I said, you can change these hardware pins if you want. These slide guides, you can lube them up. This is an old work truck. I'm not really too concerned about noise if there is any, so I'm not going to worry about it. Like I said, I usually don't replace these unless they're really bad, because the aftermarket ones just don't tend to fit as well as the factory ones. So going to leave those there. You can always replace them later if there's any issue. But yeah, other than that, I mean, just put your brake pads on, make sure those are lubed, and then tighten your calipers down. I think it's like 35 foot-pounds. I just get them hand tight. I just know how tight it's supposed to be from experience. And then put your wheel on. When you do this, it's a good idea, especially if you're replacing this rotor, to go ahead and torque these wheels. 150 foot-pound on this one, and then the whole point is this: that you want a new rotor. You don't want to warp it, and if you got them uneven torqued, it can potentially warp it. A lot of debate on that. We're not going to debate that, but just to get a practice to get into, and that's pretty much it. There's no need to go over the other side. It'd be just a waste of time, make the video longer than it needs to be. You're going to be doing the same procedure on the other side, but do make sure you pump that brake pedal when you're done. I hope you guys liked the video. Hope you get subscribed, and hope this helps somebody out, and we'll see you on the next one.